Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. We are Barbara Lancho Barrantes and Sally Dalton, and we are very happy to present and discuss this topic of predatory publishing with the LIS-Bibliometrics community. So, I'm going to start contextualizing predatory publishing. The main features that can define this fraudulent editorial practices are non-existent of peer review process. They offer researchers the opportunity to rapidly publish. They prioritize their own exploitative academic publishing business model with lack or even complete absence of transparency. The way they approach researchers is sending mass email invitations for publishing. This is not uncommon to find how these predatory journals duplicate websites of authentic journals to look more believable for researchers. It is important to mention researchers could be participating on peer reviewing predatory journals, so they can participate as a peer review for predatory journal. There are international lists, possibly you are already familiar with. The Beall list is the original one, cables, etc. In 2015, were found a number of 8,000 active predatory journals. So, we cannot forget that these predatory behavior are in conferences as well. Please, Sally, can you? So, what was the origin of the problem? Open access publishing enables scholarly to be openly available to everybody, which has huge benefits. However, the open access movement has opened the door for this unfair business to take advantage of researchers, especially early career researchers who need to survive in this publish or perish academic era. Therefore, predatory journals are abusing the open access publishing, making money out of author of pay-to-publish model. It is worth pointing out that not all open access journals are predatory. In fact, the problem is penetrating the journal that were not conceived as an open access from the beginning. Their main goal is to exploit researchers and focus on profits. They don't care about the advancement of science, and they don't bother about integrity of research.
Thanks, Barbara. Okay, so Barbara's talked a little bit about the origins of the problem, and we begin to think, okay, why do researchers publish in predatory journals? So I think Barbara's covered a number of these points, but it's important to mention that a lot of the people who do publish in predatory journals are actually early career researchers rather than the more established and experienced researchers. And as Barbara said, there was, the publish and perish, the desire to get published quickly, and this emphasis on research assessment and getting publications out there as many as you can. So research has shown that a lot of the people who publish in predatory journals are from the global south, but actually when we were researching this topic, that there is also research to show that actually it's a global problem, and researchers from all over the world are publishing in predatory journals. So although maybe there is a focus on researchers from the global south, it's not just researchers from that area of the world, it is a global problem. So we do need to be, thinking about this. So in terms of possible consequences of publishing in a predatory journal. So of course there's individual consequences for researchers. So negative impact on their credibility as a researcher if they have published in predatory journals and they have a scholarly record of publishing in predatory journals. This can have a negative impact on things like promotion or tenure, so it can really negatively affect individual researchers. But also it has a wider, more general consequence for the trustworthiness of scholarly research, that people will lack won't trust scholarly research because we don't know whether this research that's published in predatory journals has been peer reviewed. There's no transparency there. We don't know whether we can rely on that research. And of course, it's not only publishing in predatory journals that's a problem. It's also the fact that people are citing research within predatory journals. So we don't know whether that research that they're citing has been peer reviewed and whether we can rely on that research. So not only an impact for individual researchers, but also generally for research as a whole. So how is open access community responding? Okay, so we feel that there is a move towards best practice frameworks, standards, rather than using exclusionary criteria. So in the past, there's been the Beall's list, and there are other lists of predatory journals that you can use. But there is potential bias within those lists, and particularly around the Beall's list. We weren't quite sure what criteria Beall was using to put journals on that list, and there was discussions around whether that list was biased against journals from the global south, from publishers that that publish in languages other than English. So there's kind of been a bit of a move away from those lists of journals, predatory journals that are quite exclusionary, and a move towards using these best practice frameworks. And there's quite a few of these frameworks and standards that journals can work towards. DOAJ is probably one of the well-known ones, but there are others, and the Journal Publishing Practices and Standards Framework focuses on journals in the Global South. So there are lots of these frameworks and standards that are being developed. So yeah, as I said, there's less bias in these lists because we're not just adding predatory journals, we are looking at how journals can meet these best practice frameworks. And it's important to note that lists like DOAJ has a large percentage of journals that publish in languages other than English. I think that's a really positive step. I think also there's a move towards focusing on really educating researchers around this topic. There is so much information on predatory journals. There's so many best practice frameworks, standards, lists of predatory journals, checklists that you can use. There's so much information, and it is really confusing. I've been looking at some predatory journal websites over the last few weeks, and it's really hard sometimes to work out whether it is a predatory journal or not. So there is a move to focus on educating researchers around this, and what we can do as bibliometric practitioners to help researchers navigate the predatory journal landscape. And then finally, we thought that it's quite interesting to mention that there is a move towards encouraging open peer review, encouraging the deposit of preprints, and having that discussion with researchers. Not that this will solve the problem of predatory journals, but it's increasing the transparency of the whole research process, and it's engaging researchers in those discussions around transparency, around where they may publish, which may go in some way towards helping researchers make those decisions around where to publish and be a bit more knowledgeable about predatory journals.
Are predatory journals indexed in databases? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. Some studies have identified this predatory journal in Scopus, Web of Science, and Medline. Scopus has stopped adding content from the red flag title, but still the extent of the problem is difficult to quantify. That means that the paper from this title are no longer added to the database. However, the old content might be still indexed in the database. Scopus is curated by a content selection and advisory board, which is maintaining the integrity of Scopus and the high quality curated content. We encourage researchers be alert. They can use the Think, Check, and Submit website that is quite useful to verify if the journal is reliable or not, which help researchers identify other trusted journals and publishers for the research. So we cannot automatically assume that because a journal is indexed in the multidisciplinary citation databases is not predatory at the moment. So are any of you familiar with this terminology, citation contamination, fighting citation pollution? Although we really like it, we have not invented. It's from the Scholarly Kitchen website, and we found it quite relevant to mention it in this presentation. Citation contamination or citation pollution is the citation of the references that researchers give to documents or papers published in predatory journals. Authors must ensure that they are not accidentally polluting the scholarly record. Crossref took the decision to rescind the membership of Omics, bringing this issue of citation pollution. Omics will no longer able to deposit DOIs via Crossref because these fraudulent are finding their way into PubMed. So once these predatory journals are in PubMed, they can be easily found and mixed with other journals, can be easily cited. So we ask the question now: how many articles are based on articles published in predatory journal at the moment? Some predatory have published fictional papers about Star Wars, Dr. Freud, or if you eat a lot of chocolate, you can lose weight. Authors, these can also modify the p-value. It's called p-hacking, just to the resulting of the data, just to receive more citation and contaminate science. So citation to predatory journal are increasing. There were a number of 814 citation to articles published in predatory journals. But Sally and I, we were doing a test using a database. Sally is going to show you now. And we were very surprised that we found this.
Yeah, so this was just a little example to show you how we could use bibliometrics to detect citations to predatory journals. So if you want to know more about how we did this, you can contact us afterwards and we'd be happy to talk you through it. But basically what we did, we identified a predatory journal, and then we used a key bibliographic database to find out how many documents had referenced or cited papers published in that journal. So in the example that we looked at, so we haven't given the journal name, we've just called it Journal A, and we searched in one of the main bibliographic citation databases, and we found over 18,000 papers that were citing this journal that was a predatory journal. So how can we trust those 18,000 papers, that research that has been published, that is based on citation, that could be based on citations that were from predatory journals? So just a question to you, hypothetical question, how many of your universities, of your teams within your institutions are citing predatory journals? Do you know that? Are you aware? Do your institutions ask you about this? Is this something that we need to be flagging with our institutions as bibliometric practitioners? Okay, so just to talk a little bit about developments in artificial intelligence, in terms of identifying predatory journals. There has been some research done on this, and one of the main areas is actually looking at language analysis and looking at specific language features of predatory journals, and the fact that research has been done to show that predatory journals use certain types of language on their websites, and researchers have developed artificial intelligence algorithms to identify these types of journals. There is also other machine learning algorithms that use certain criteria. So researchers develop a set of criteria that they think would identify a predatory journal. They've built that into machine learning algorithms that you can then run through the journal through these algorithms, and it will tell you whether it thinks it's a predatory journal. And similarly with fake articles, again, machine learning algorithms detect these fake articles. And this Hydra research was quite interesting, but I don't think has been fully developed yet. But it's basically using APIs to detect citations to predatory journals. So that's quite an innovative piece of research, I think, that not just looking at is a journal predatory, but actually once the researcher has written their research, you can run it through this API and it will tell you how many citations it thinks are to predatory journal. So that could be quite useful to have those conversations with researchers. And as bibliometric practitioners, do we need to be increasing our knowledge and skills around artificial intelligence and these systems? Could we potentially work with artificial intelligence researchers to build and improve these systems? But it's important to say that obviously we can't just rely on these algorithms, unfortunately. I was at the talk by Siobhan Smith last week when she was talking about using algorithms to classify citations. And I think she raised a really important point about how we need to use our critical thinking skills as well. We can't just rely. These aren't just a quick answer to the quick fix to predatory journals, but maybe we could build them into our tools that we could use.
How can bibliometric services help? This could be a new competencies for bibliometric practitioners and bibliometricians. What skill we need to develop? We are working in our competencies model for bibliometric work, and we are going to consider if it's worth to include this task as a competencies for bibliometrics in order that they can support researchers to identify these journals. We can use our knowledge as a bibliometrician about metrics, journals, publication, and databases to support researchers to identify and create awareness. So we have found few bibliometrics analysis in the databases about analyzing predatory journals. But we consider the bibliometrics community could do more. So maybe combining the expertise in bibliometrics with about publication and metrics with the expert in data science and computer science, artificial intelligence, to tackle together this global problem. As a bibliometric service, we should encourage researchers to use bibliometrics to investigate the journal before submitting, citing, or peer reviewing, participating in peer reviewing. Engaging with services like where to publish. Bibliometrician could recommend collaboration among global North and South to avoid publishing in this journal, because we detect that some of the targets for this predatory journal are in the global South, unfortunately. So we encourage the collaboration between global South and North-South. Possibly we can avoid this or stop this problem, hopefully.
Okay, I realise we've only got kind of 1 minute left, but I am still going to ask you this question, and I think maybe Barbara and I could reflect on your answers after the presentation and maybe share with the community. So what I'd like to ask you to do is to go to menti.com, and the code is 26736613. And I would love to know, we both love to know, how do you support researchers in relation to predatory journals? And what are you doing? Are you doing something innovative that we haven't talked about today? We'd really like to find that out. So although I haven't got time to look at everybody's responses now, I would still really encourage you to fill that in, and maybe we can reflect upon it and share it with the community afterwards. So please do that if you can, that would be great.
Thank you all for participating in the poll. I think it's good. It's quite interesting, the data that we can obtain from the poll. So research library play a crucial role to develop knowledge around well-known publishers, helping researchers to use data sources. Libraries could create awareness among researchers to enhance research integrity, avoiding the publish and perish in academia. At Leeds University Library, we have a webpage called Where to Publish, in which you can find a lot of information about how you can decide where to publish. And we are also running webinars to educate researchers in this kind of things, to help them with decision making. So research library can promote best practices guideline, engaging with researchers about this issue through survey, interview, or support, the support that they give. So thank you very much. I think we were on the time. I hope that you found this presentation useful. We are very happy to continue discussion after this presentation. If you would like to contact us after that, we are very happy to discuss.
Thank you both. We are approaching the end of your slot, but we have a lot of questions. I think people have found that talk really, really stimulating. Catherine, do you want to pick a few to go through before we have to break?
Yes, I'm just going to mention something that's come up in the chat. Someone's saying, could you repost the Menti code, please?
Yes, I'll do that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We have got a lot of questions, so I'm going to, one of them is, how did you identify the predatory journal? I think that's a contact us afterwards question. And then someone was also asking about what opportunities there are for bibliometrics people to work with scholarly communications and OA librarians in this area. And again, I think that's kind of something you've touched on, and also contact us afterwards kind of a question. Right, so yes, so somebody said how we think about predatory journals is interesting. In bibliometrics, we often emphasize how we need to judge an article on its own merit and not the journal in which it's published. Yet when it comes to articles in predatory journals, it seems that this way of thinking goes out of the window. If we label them as bad and something to be ideally removed from the research system, we're also systematically dismissing the articles in those journals without giving them a chance to be judged on their own merit. Is there a way we could approach predatory journals appropriately, but without automatically biasing against the articles themselves, especially relevant to early career researchers?
Yeah, I think that's where we trying to move away from these exclusionary lists that you just see a journal on a list and you think, oh, that's predatory, we can just ignore any research that's been published in there. So I think moving to these best practice frameworks and guidelines and allowing journals to try and meet those guidelines, hopefully will try and reduce that problem of just dismissing everything that's in a journal because it's in an exclusionary list. But yes, I understand your point. We go on about assessing each individual article on its own merit, which, you know, we should still be doing. I think it's around using our critical thinking skills as well, that, you know, we still need to be asking ourselves these questions about, you know, around, is this a predatory journal, or is it just a new possibly a new journal or a new publisher that's trying to give voice to certain researchers in the world, which I think, you know, is great and really important. So yeah, I understand your point, and I think we need to keep an open mind and try and use those critical questioning skills around that, and don't just dismiss a journal because it appears on an exclusionary list.
Well, I would like to add that not all the journal that we receive invitation through email are automatically predatory. I received an email last week about a journal of all metrics that is edited by a well-recognized researcher in the area, and is not predatory. Some new journals are paying this problem because other predatory send mass email to researchers. So, but I think that analyzing the journal itself in the website with all the basic criteria that, for example, they have a lot of grammatical mistakes or no ISSN, no identifier. So there are some basic criteria that all they meet. So I think it's a bit of research.
Okay, we do have a couple more questions. I'm not sure, do we have time to answer those, or is this something we're going to ask Sally and Barbara to pick up in the blog? Because I think this is an area which could easily be expanded on by the looks of it.
Yes, I definitely think you could. I'm just looking at the others. I'm not sure if you can see, we've got time for like maybe one short question. I essentially want to give everybody a bit of a break before we go into the panel discussion. So yeah, maybe time for one short one.
Right, I'll go for a short one, which is how do you know the number of citations of predatory journals really refer to actual predatory journals and not authentic journals whose ISSN or title have been hijacked?
Well, because we search the ISSNs of a predatory journal in the databases, and we count the number of references that went to this journal with this ISSN that was a predatory journal. So I don't know if I am answering the question or not. So we use all the identifier of the predatory journal, and we calculate how many references of all the articles in the database reference article published in this journal. So there are a lot of publications that are being based on publication published in predatory journals. So how many publications produce institution based on this fraudulent journal?